But here's what I'll talk about with marketplace real quick is that when you're looking at a market to do business in, whether it's your market or whether it's an out of state market, you kind of want to look at the same thing. And here, one thing before we even dive into that, a lot of people think they're going to invest in their own backyard because they know their own backyard. Well, that might be true, but do you really know the nuances and the details that are important in your own backyard to multifamily investing, to value add investing? You might know where the cool bars and restaurants are. You might know what neighborhoods are dangerous and what neighborhoods aren't. That's definitely of benefit. But what you really want to make sure you know is where are the jobs going? What
Exactly.
types of jobs are going into certain areas? What is the government doing to promote business and promote growth into certain areas? You also want to know, what the rent affordability is. That's really important in my opinion right now is rent affordability. We've got a rent affordability kind of crisis going on out there. And then what is the government doing to step in to solve this rent affordability, or what they call solve the rent affordability? Minneapolis are doing a lot of things that I think is going to be very damaging to landlords. And so you've got to be cognizant of what's going on there. And Minneapolis is my home market. So, you've got to be aware of all this stuff. You've got to be aware of what is the population growth. Maybe we know it's growing, but what is the population growth? People always tell me, well, Minneapolis is a super hot market. That's a great market to be in. And I say, well, sure, it's a good market. I like the market. But in reality, our population is growing by 0.6 annually. Is it growth? Yeah, it's growth, but it's not massive growth like some people are like, oh, Minneapolis is booming. No, not really. It's not booming. It's barely moving the needle forward. We're losing. So we've lost some Fortune 500 companies. We used to have 24 now, or I think we're down to 17. So there's something to kind of keep an eye on. I still think the market's good for various different reasons, but we want to look at the whole picture. Again, just because you live there doesn't mean you know it. You really want to dive in and look at the population growth, look at the job growth, and the types of jobs are really important too.
Welcome to the Wealth Through Real Estate Investing podcast, your source for real-world strategies focused on creating long-term wealth, cash flow, and financial freedom through real estate. Through guidance, tips, and stories of highly successful real estate investors and thought leaders, we provide you the tools to succeed and reach the lifestyle you always wanted. And now your host, Dwaine Clarke.
Hello and welcome to the Wealth Through Real Estate Investing podcast. This is your host, Dwaine Clarke. And today we have Todd Dexheimer. Todd is a real estate investor who has purchased, renovated, and sold well over 700 units, ranging from single-family homes, duplexes, multifamily properties, mobile homes, raw land, and even a ski resort. His current focus is on value-add multifamily syndication in emerging markets. Todd and his team has purchased multifamily buildings in 5 states and holds over $35 million in real estate. Todd also has raised over $15 million in private equity. Todd, thank you so much for joining us on the show. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing fantastic and appreciate you having me on, Dwaine.
Absolutely. I'm here in Connecticut. You're all the way on the other side of the country, so really cool to connect, especially with this internet thing. You can connect with anybody all over the place. So
yeah,
we had a very cool pre-intro chat, just kind of getting to know a little bit more about you. But you have a very interesting background. I mentioned that I read about that you were a teacher. Would you kind of elaborate kind of your backstory and how you ultimately got into real estate?
Yeah. Well, like you said, I was a high school industrial tech teacher. So I taught shop class. I still got all 10 fingers, which is great. And honestly, it was like almost right away when I started teaching, probably within the first, 2 to 3, maybe 4 months in. I remember saying to my wife, I got to figure out what I'm going to do when I grow up. So it didn't take very long. I figured I just knew it wasn't quite for me. I enjoyed some aspects, but I didn't enjoy the whole deal. So I started kind of looking for the different things to go do. I thought about going back to school, becoming a doctor or whatever, all kinds of different stuff. And eventually I just kind of stumbled upon these entrepreneurial books, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and, all the kind of classic books that most entrepreneurs start to read to get intrigued. And that's where it snowballed. I read some real estate related books and said that this sounds fun. This is what I want to do. And so it just kept on diving in and deeper into these real estate books until finally I felt comfortable enough to go out there and start looking. And that was a whole year plus process, but eventually I went in and started buying some properties. And this was right during 2008. So it was it was great timing, but it was also very scary timing because the sky was falling and everybody said to run the other way, and you're stupid and you're crazy. If you're going to buy real estate, it's the worst investment there is. But I really wanted to get going on it. And the numbers made so much sense to me. So I was naive, which is good, probably, but allowed me to get started. And so I started buying just single family homes, just small duplexes, single family homes, buying some to live in and renovate, buying some to flip, and buying some to hold as rentals. And I continue to snowball that and just continue to buy these flips. I did over 150 fix and flips. I bought a bunch of rentals, had, probably 75, 80 of them at one time. And did kind of a bunch of different things. Did some wholesale deals, did a couple developments. As you said, I bought a ski resort. I flipped a mobile home park, and bought some small apartment buildings. And eventually it was time to transition and figure out, okay, how can I scale this into a larger thing? The fix and flips was a job, a lot of head damage. And I wanted to really create that passive cash flow. So I transitioned into the larger multifamilies, which is what I'm doing now. I'm buying 100+ unit value add multifamily, and I'm buying them through syndication. So just for those who don't know what syndication is, it's just pooling other people's money together to buy this this apartment asset, and getting the money for the down payment. So that's my main focus right now. I do a little bit of coaching as well, people who want to do what I do. And then I've got a podcast as well too.
Cool. Yeah, and we'll definitely dive into that. But I'm very intrigued by kind of that transition, especially now that you said that you're coaching, because probably a lot of people who listen on the call or get engaged in real estate kind of want to find out how they can turn their full time into going to the real estate for a whole bunch of reasons. And of course, your reason was you wanted to do something different and you have a little bit different thing to provide for your family. How did that feeling was when you did that initial transition over? Like, it wasn't like the most, the pleasant thing where you see on the news, like, oh, everyone should go into real estate. Everyone's telling you to go to the opposite direction. So for you to jump in wholeheartedly, were you that confident in your education, or was there kind of like some trial and error, or was some things that you probably would have did different if you can do it over again?
I was very committed to it. So was I confident in it? Absolutely. I was very confident in it. I was very confident that I could run the numbers. I was very, very committed. I really wanted to make this thing happen and be doing it full time. Very quickly, I wanted to quit my job. Now I didn't. I was still working full time and doing the real estate for a while, but very quickly I wanted to scale and do it. So was I nervous? Yeah, for sure. I mean, like I said, everybody's telling you you're stupid and crazy and it's the worst investment in the world. And, everybody just lost their shirt in real estate. And here I am thinking I can go do it. But, the numbers made sense. I'm sitting here looking at a single family house. I can be all in at $60,000 to $80,000 and my rent's at $1,400 a month. I mean, those numbers work all day long, and it didn't take a lot for me to figure that out. And then these fix and flips, I think that was probably the most nerve-wracking thing, was when I started doing these fix and flips, because prices are still falling. And so you're going, okay, I think this house is worth $100,000 or 150 or whatever it is. And I can fix it up and sell it. But one thing I did that I think made me feel really comfortable is I only bought houses that could cash flow after I was done renovating them. So I was renovating them. We'd buy them, this big wreck of a property, renovate it. And then the goal is to sell it, of course. But if it didn't sell, we could keep it and still cash flow it nicely. So that really provided me a lot of kind of comfort, knowing that was available as a kind of a backfall. And quite frankly, it ended up happening a couple times where I just didn't sell the property for the price I wanted to, and was able to keep it, was able to get a loan on it and keep the property and rent it and cash flow. And I still have one of those properties today.
Yeah, that's very smart to kind of look at that, because especially during those fix and flip days, especially around that period of time, people was always counting on that appreciation. They were giving people loans, hand over fist. I mean, all over the place. So you just kind of assume like, I'm gonna fix this thing up, flip it, make big profit, and then move on to the next one, not knowing that if you can't sell it, I'm gonna have to put a tenant or two in here to maintain me while I'm adjusting the prices. So it's extremely smart. And a lot of people lost their shirts, thinking they just count on that appreciation. And
Yeah.
investors that I talked to, they said you got to buy off cash flow. And like I said, the appreciation is kind of like that extra, nice thing about it. But you gotta make sure you buy it right and know where the numbers are at.
Yeah. And the one I just mentioned that I capped, and I could have sold it and still would have made money on it, but it was just that to that point where it's like, okay, I can make 10 grand on it, or I can keep it and I can make 450, $500 a month. Well, let's just make the cash flow instead. But that property, to give you an example of what was happening in the market, that property was about a block away from another house, very identical house that I flipped and sold for $130,000. And this property renovated and actually finished the basement, which is another level beyond what I did to the last house. So it was actually a nicer house. And I could not sell that. The market had gone down to a point where I think we're on the market the last time as we finally dropped it off at like right around $100,000. So it went from 130 down to $100,000 in value. And that was within a year time so that was what was happening with the markets. You just had to be careful what you're doing. And the reason I got out of flipping, quite frankly, or among many, but one of the reasons was we could no longer do that model. You couldn't buy a property and fix it up and then cash flow. It just didn't work. So, I'm sitting there all in at these properties at $250,000 and the rent would be, $1,500 to $1,800. Oh, those numbers don't work so well. So that was one of those things where it's like, man, I'm putting myself out there. I'm exposing the risk. If the market does shift, I'm fully exposed. Now the market's behaved very well for people who've chosen to continue to flip, but it just, among other reasons, it just wasn't for me.
Cool. And as far as like you had experience in wholesaling, the fix and flips, and the rent, and kind of the 1 to 4 unit buildings, now the transition over to the large stuff, can you kind of take us through the experience of the first large multifamily, maybe share with us some of the numbers and stuff like that and how that deal worked out?
Yeah. So, that transition was a little slow. Like I said, I went and started buying like mid-size multifamily. So when I say mid-size, I mean like 10 to 20, 30 unit buildings. And then I transitioned into that 100 unit type buildings. So I'll take you through kind of, first of all, the mindset was just, look, scale is going to be better. I can have on-site staff. That makes a lot of sense. I can hire an on-site maintenance person. I can hire an on-site leasing person. So once you can do that, now you can really, I think, help create some efficiencies and create more of a business model versus just not. When you have those smaller properties, you can't do that. So people have to run there to the property if there's problems. You have to have somebody run there if they're going to show the property. So not that they're as terrible, but it's just not as efficient. So so you want me to take you through the deal, or how do you want me to explain it?
Yeah, I think that'd be cool for the listeners to hear. Maybe just kind of like, maybe an example, not like the first one of like a larger one, as far as kind of like, what you purchased it for, was it a, heavy lift value add, or
Yep.
more managerial, and maybe run us through some of the numbers?
Yeah. So the one of the first ones that I did, first of all, I'll talk about how I found it. this was a broker relationship, built a broker relationship. And I was looking for these properties, and we had looked at several properties, and there was a property that came up on the market, not listed actually by this broker, but came up on the market. I said, yeah, I want to offer on it, but it was only 46 units. And I said, look, I don't want to offer on this thing unless I can find another property that's at least that size or bigger, because I want scale. And I want the other one to be within, a mile or so of this property. So they said, okay, let's see what we can find. We ended up finding a property that was just under 100 units, and said, all right, let's do it. Let's write on this one. And it's right on the 46 unit building. They're actually right next to each other. And so we ended up doing that. Didn't get the 46 unit, but got the other property and got it under contract. It was a deep value add. I don't know about deep, but we were putting, about 12 grand a unit into it. So it was good size value add. It was not completely stabilized, so we had to use a bridge loan. And by stabilized, I mean, it wasn't 90% plus occupied. When we bought it, I think we took over at like 86%, and then immediately lost a lot of occupancy. It was a challenging property, and it's, quite frankly, it still is. I still own it, and it's still got issues that we're trying to work out from the old management. It was an older property built in the early 70s. The old management just abused it, didn't do anything to it. And we knew that going into it, but they had some hidden skeletons in the closet that they didn't really disclose to us. So, we had some extra issues that we weren't really prepared to deal with. So I've learned quite a bit from that deal. I've learned, really honestly, on that deal is now I put a lot larger reserve account in place, and I cushion my budget a lot more, my renovation budget a lot more, because we've ended up having to go into our pockets to get this renovation done and to be able to complete it. And the most important part is you want tenants, you want cash flow. And so that's what you got to create when you buy a property, and you want to create it as quickly as possible. So we've had our bumps and bruises along the way, and I think it'll end up working out pretty well in the end, because we were able to buy it for just under 30,000 a unit. We ended up buying it for.
Wow.
Yeah, and stuck, like I said, about 12 into it, and it's worth well over 50 a unit. So there was still, the numbers will work out well in the end. But we've just had a lot of challenges along the way, a lot of good learning experiences. Of course, it's, you never want that learning experience on a particular property, right? You're always like, oh man, I wish it didn't happen on this property, but that's just kind of how it goes. And it was bumps and bruises, but overall pretty good property.
Nice. Yeah, it just seemed like a lot of opportunity in that particular marketplace. Do you see this more of like a longer term hold, or do you have a specific business model where you're just trying to get out of it in a certain time period?
Yeah, our goal on this property was a 5 to 8 year hold. Trying to do the renovation and then do a refinance. Not pull out all the money, but the goal is to pull out about 50% or so, 40 to 50% of the equity. Now, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. That wasn't the business. The business model, the profit, wasn't based on needing to refinance and pull money out, but we're hoping to, and that's actually coming pretty quickly here. We're going to refinance and be able to pull money out of it.
Cool. And you mentioned you have other properties in other different markets, or also in your same market as well?
Yeah, so I did the same thing on this property when I bought it. Like I said, it was just under 100 units, and I said, "Look, Mr. Broker, I want I want more. I want better scale, and having 200 units is much more scalable than having 100 units, and so I want better scale." And so I said, same thing. Let's find another property within a mile or so of this property, and that's exactly what we did. We found another property. It's probably about just over half a mile away. That one was just over 100 units, and we're able to combine those and now have about just over 200 units combined together. to really help with scale. We share some, we share some of the management team back and forth. We're able to on the one property, we're putting in maybe not quite as high of finishes just because of the budgetary constraints. So we had on one property, we're doing black appliances. On the other property, we're doing white appliances.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the one property had a ton of white appliances at it that were fairly new, actually. So we're able to actually move those appliances over and do that for free.
Nice.
So that's, there's been definitely some benefits to being able to share these properties or share, they're different entities, but we can still work together and create some efficiencies with them. So, and then, I own some properties in other locations as well.
How is the marketplace there? Fair. I know it's like I said, it's in your backyard. You know it. You did so much business there. What are you kind of seeing that little thing maybe can educate some investors that may be interested in your marketplace?
Well, here's what I'll talk about with marketplace. First of all, this is out of state, so it's not my home.
Oh, okay. I thought this was in your state.
But here's what I'll talk about with marketplace real quick is that when you're looking at a market to do business in, whether it's your market or whether it's an out-of-state market, you kind of want to look at the same thing. And here, one thing before we even dive into that, a lot of people think they're going to invest in their own backyard because they know their own backyard. Well, that might be true, but do you really know the nuances and the details that are important in your own backyard to multifamily investing, to value add investing? You might know where the cool bars and restaurants are. You might know what neighborhoods are dangerous and what neighborhoods aren't. That's definitely of benefit. But what you really want to make sure you know is where are the jobs going? What types of jobs are going into certain areas? What is the government doing to promote business and promote growth into certain areas? You also want to know, what the rent affordability is. That's really important in my opinion right now is rent affordability. We've got a rent affordability kind of crisis going on out there. And then what is the government doing to step in to solve this rent affordability, or what they call solve the rent affordability? Minneapolis are doing a lot of things that I think is going to be very damaging to landlords. And so you've got to be cognizant of what's going on there. And Minneapolis is my home market. So, you've got to be aware of all this stuff. You've got to be aware of what is the population growth. Maybe we know it's growing, but what is the population growth? People always tell me, well, Minneapolis is a super hot market. That's a great market to be in. And I say, well, sure, it's a good market. I like the market. But in reality, our population is growing by 0.6 annually. Is it growth? Yeah, it's growth, but it's not massive growth like some people are like, oh, Minneapolis is booming. No, not really. It's not booming. It's barely moving the needle forward. We're losing. So we've lost some Fortune 500 companies. We used to have 24 now, and I think we're down to 17. So there's something to kind of keep an eye on. I still think the market's good for various different reasons, but we want to look at the whole picture. Again, just because you live there doesn't mean you know it. You really want to dive in and look at the population growth, look at the job growth, and the types of jobs are really important too. People get excited about this Amazon. Amazon is this big buzzword, right? Amazon's bringing in this new distribution. Well, is an Amazon distribution going to bring a ton of good jobs? I probably would say no. I mean, is it going to bring in jobs? And any job is a good job? Yeah. But if I've got a company that's going to be coming in, that's a Fortune 500 company or a company that with a lot of kind of middle management and management jobs, those are also going to bring in some lower jobs. Those are going to bring in, then create more and more lower or middle income jobs because they spend. People with money spend. They're going to buy a new house. They're going to, do all this kind of stuff that's going to then create more jobs. So when I got to look at the types of jobs, I want some executives coming in. I want some middle management coming in. And then I want some labor coming in. But I know the executives and the middle management are going to create more labor jobs, more kind of that lower tier, mid-tier job. That probably is my tenant base. But if I just have only my tenant base getting jobs, that's not as beneficial as some of both. So,
Exactly.
um, so that's super important. And then population trends are really important. Um, and like I said, the rent affordability, in my opinion, is one of the most important things to be cognizant of right now.
Yeah, I like that. And I like that you went in deep with that as well. Cause like I said, I talk a lot about I have a brokerage division as well. So I'm talking about markets all the time. I specialize in single tenant net lease or have clients in buying in different states. So I'm constantly looking at market cycles, looking at different areas and stuff. And that's huge. The diversity of jobs, middle management, top tier management, all that type of stuff in order to have like a really good robust thing that can sustain itself. And like I said,
Yeah.
just having one single thing is not gonna it's gonna end up tipping everything over. And of course governmental regulations and landlord tenant laws and things like that makes a huge diff. I'm here in of course Connecticut, and we have a tremendous amount of struggles here to do business here, and there's a lot of exodus out of the state. So like I said, hard to even now even do business here, but to attract any type of investor capital who will be interested in investing into this market. So it's very interesting on how you look at it, and thanks for giving us so much detail on that.
I hate to, you don't want to like sound bad, but it's true.
Mhm.
People that have a lot of money, make a lot of money, really do help the economy and the city go in the direction that you want it to go. And so when you only have the lower end jobs, not that you don't need those jobs, and those people aren't, I'm not saying those people aren't great people, but they don't create an economy that's going to continue to flourish, right? Because they don't have that extra discretionary income in order to really spend and buy and push the economy the way that most of us want it to go.
Absolutely. As far as kind of just going a little bit deeper, is there any, I know that you have your investments now, as far as kind of the future, is there any markets that you're targeting right now, or maybe something down the line looking to look at right now, or you just kind of, taking your time, with your current investments?
Yeah. So the answer is both. I mean, I'm really trying to focus on my current investments. I want to make sure they're performing well for my investors. So the majority of my time right now is spent on that. But am I also looking at new opportunities? Absolutely. I'm always continuing to look in the markets that I'm in. So the markets that I'm actively pursuing right now are Southern Ohio, Kentucky, and Tennessee. So those are the markets that I'm really pursuing right now, and the larger tier cities within those markets or within those states. Other markets I really like are the Carolinas. I like those markets a lot. The Carolinas, Atlanta. Sorry, not Atlanta, Georgia. Atlanta, I think, is a little hot, but there's some other markets within Georgia that I really like. And then I like Phoenix. However, I haven't done my probably homework enough to know if it's a market I would invest in yet. But it's a market we're doing some research in. We've got some broker contacts that we're diving into, and just kind of seeing where they go. You got to be careful right now. I mean, I think anybody, it's hard to say that we're not close to the top. So I think you just got to be careful when you enter into new markets, whether it's multifamily or retail or industrial. It doesn't matter what it is. I think you just got to be careful with what you're doing right now. There's a lot less forgiveness out there than there was maybe 3 to 5 years ago, where you could make mistakes and the market was just going to pick you up. I don't think that's necessarily the case right now. Not that I think we're going to crash and burn. I just think we've got a little less forgiveness going on right now. So you got to be careful entering a new market. So when I say I like those markets, I do, but I want to enter them in slowly, and probably going to be entering them in with partnerships that make a lot of sense for me. So I'm trying to build relationships with other investors where I can strategically partner with them, and we can both bring value to the property, both bring value to our investors, and do it in a way that hopefully will allow us all to make money at the end of the day instead of lose it.
Good. Yeah, that actually answered my next question I had. It was kind of like your what was part of your business model? Was it, being open to working with other investors, doing JVs and stuff like that?
Yeah. At
So,
first it wasn't. It was,
mhm,
I'm going to do it myself. I don't want other partners involved at all. And now it's, yeah, let's look and see. And everybody's not going to be the right partner, right? But one of the nice
mhm,
things about real estate is that it's a transaction. So I could partner with, let's say, you on one deal. And if maybe you and I don't get to get along together, and we, after we get into it, it just maybe it's not even that we don't get along. Maybe it's just that your skill set and my skill set are too close, where it doesn't make sense for us to continue to do a ton of deals together, because we're missing, we've got still a missing piece by
mhm.
working with each other. So we just say, hey, this one deal was great. Let's do it. Let's make money. Let's push this thing forward. But it just doesn't make sense to continue to do deals with each other, because you're good at the same things I'm good at, maybe. So I can do a deal with somebody else though, and maybe that partnership works really well, where we've got skills that really complement each other, and maybe we do a couple deals together. But that's the nice thing about real estate is we can do a transaction together.
Mhm.
We don't necessarily have to be, business partners on everything.
Makes sense. As far as kind of, you had mentioned the other piece was, your investors, building capital. Of course, if you're looking to expand, go into different marketplaces, build up the business. What was more, or what has been effective for you as far as raising capital? I know you've raised over $15 million in equity. What's some tips that you can offer for some of the listeners?
Yeah. First of all, know what you're doing, right? Understand what you're getting your investors in completely. And I don't mean just like have read some books and listen to some podcasts. And no, I mean like completely understand it. Make sure you've done deals, or you're bringing them into a partnership that has done deals. So maybe you haven't done them yourselves, but make sure you're partnering with somebody that has done deals and has been successful and understands what they're doing. So I think that's really important. I think what's been very successful for me is that I'm I'm honest. I mean, my investors feel comfortable with me because they know that I'm going to take care of them. They know I'm going to do whatever I need to do to make sure I take care of them. They know that I'm going to lose money if I need to make sure they make money, or at least break even. If it means I'm going to lose $500,000 or whatever it is to make them break even, I'm going to do it. Like, is it part of the business plan? Is it part of the operating agreement? No, but I'm going to do it. And so I think that's really important for them to understand that. And do you need to tell them that? I don't tell my investors that, but they just know it by knowing who I am. So some of the strategies I've used to raise money would be my podcast. My podcast has been big. Being on other people's podcasts has been big. Social media, going on to things like Bigger Pockets and Facebook and LinkedIn has been big. Speaking at meetups and events, that's been big. Just going to meetups and events, conferences, that's been big. So just getting out there, telling people what you do. There was a time where I didn't want to tell anybody what I did. People would ask me, hey, what do you do? And I would say, oh, I'm in real estate. Oh, you're a realtor? Sure. Yeah, that sounds good. I didn't tell people what I did. I think it's important to, people ask you what you do, tell them what you do. And you don't need to brag about it. You don't need to sit there and tell them your life story, but understand that it's okay to tell people what you do and get it out there a little bit, I think is really important. So people don't know what you're doing. They're not going to know how to invest with you. They're not going to know that it's okay to even invest with you. So that's one of the big lessons I've learned is people need to know what you're doing. There's
Mhm.
plenty of people that didn't. And for me right now, my thought before was, oh, I don't want to brag, right? I don't want to tell people what I do because I don't want to be, I don't know. I just don't want to be like the pushy person, the salesman or whatever it is. Well, now it's like, you know what? What if I have somebody, a friend or somebody that I know that doesn't know what I do because I don't say anything. And then 10, 15, 20 years from now, they hear about these investments that I've done and the money I've made for my investors. And they come up to me and go, Todd, what the heck were you doing? Why didn't you tell me what you do? I
Mm-hmm.
would have loved to invest in your deals. And I go, oh crap, So provide them the opportunity. They get to decide if they're going to take it or not. And it's okay. There's plenty of people that don't want anything to do with it, but other people do.
Yeah, I like how you put it, because one of the last podcasts I did was with a newer syndicator, but scaled of it very, very quickly. And he says he, goes to his golfing club, and he just, tells people about it. And he says, man, he's like, no one talks about this at all, and he says, just an opportunity, you just put it out there, you just tell them people what you
Yeah.
do. It's an opportunity. They can choose to do it or not do it, but just, kind of just talk about it. But a lot of people is surprisingly don't know about these types of stuff for syndications, where they have money tied up in the stock market. They have them into deals that they just, driving them nuts, is very active, and they just want to kind of get out, or they're just really busy working professionals who intrigued by real estate but have no clue, and much rather put that money to work with someone that is in the game, in the, boots on the ground doing it. So like I said, the way you kind of explained it, like I said, just reminded me, like I said, a lot of people are interested or may be interested in learning more about it, but you just got to talk about it.
Yeah. And that brings up a good point is what, he's in his golf club, and I wouldn't tell everybody to join their golf club with a bunch of wealthy people if you don't enjoy golf. But
Mm-hmm.
if you've got a hobby that you like, that potentially affluent people will be around, it might be a good business expense to join the local golf club. Maybe you like sailing, so join the sailing club or the yacht club, or maybe you like tennis, so there's a private tennis club that you can join. Or for me, I love hunting. I love pheasant hunting and just being out in the woods. And so I'm looking at joining. I haven't done it yet, but I'm looking at joining our local hunting club, which is close to my house. I don't know. Is there going to be a bunch of people that will invest in my deals? Maybe, maybe not, but I enjoy doing that. So why not look at that as a potential thing? And, if you're not getting the value out of it, then you can make the decision whether you want to keep it or not. But it might be worth it if you have something you think, I think maybe affluent people would be around there. And I really enjoy whatever it is doing this.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. We kind of touched a little bit about kind of your transitional story, but I was wondering if you maybe elaborate for the people who are listening that are working professionals that are very interested, want to learn more on that transition. And was there things that you would have done differently? I know you have tons of success, and dipped your toe in a lot of different ventures. But what are some of the advice that you give for those people that's looking to kind of make that move?
Yeah. So I'm going to talk about two transitions. The first one, I don't know if I would have done it any differently. The second one, I would have done it differently. Of course, it's easy to look back and say that, and who knows. But the very first one was going from my job into real estate, and that I wouldn't have done differently. I studied, I learned about it, and then I was I was still teaching full time and buying properties. And then I went part-time into teaching. There was an opportunity for me I was split between a high school and a middle school, like 0.4 and 0.6. And there was an opportunity to go full-time middle school or to stay 0.6. They were actually going to hire a 0.6 high school teacher and put me into middle school as the full-time. And I said, no, thanks. Hire a full-time person. I'm going to take the 0.6. And that allowed me to then work 0.6 and also focus more on the real estate. So I was able to do that. Then the following year, I quit my job completely and got into real estate full time. So what I would say for advice for other people is, look, you don't have to jump into it both feet. No, can you? Sure. But if you've got a family and you've got liabilities to deal with, then just make sure you're aware of your expenses and do it a way that you set yourself up for success, because real estate is a money business and you need to have money. Now, can we raise money? Sure, but you still should have some skin in the game. And so I think it's important to understand, like, you've got to make sure that you have something coming in and take care of yourself. So for me, it was continue to teach until I had enough income coming in with my rentals to be able to replace my teaching income. And that's what I use as my metric. Now, luckily, teachers don't make much money. I was making like 30 some $1,000, like $30,000 a year when I quit. So I just had to have about 5 rentals to replace that. So that was pretty easy. But I busted my butt. I mean, I between my job and, in this real estate stuff, I was putting in a ton of hours. I mean, I was getting up at, 6 a.m. and going to bed at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. I was putting in a ton of hours. So my family, they suffered a little bit during that time. I tried to make sure I paid as much attention to them as I could, but there was plenty of long nights where I didn't even come home until 2 or 3. But there was other times where I was able to spend some more time with my family. So I did make sure I at least took care of them. But there's going to be some things that you're going to have to have to make sure people are behind you with, at least those that are closest to you.
Yeah, I like that. So kind of transition, you kind of mentioned kind of the grind work, you coming back 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Is now your typical, day a little bit different now that you're in full time? You have a bunch of systems and probably have a team in place. So what's kind of like a typical day for you? And do you have any specific morning routines?
Yeah. So for morning routine, it's not, I wouldn't say it's like set in stone, but I try to wake up, do a workout, and then do some reading. Try to read about 10 pages or so in like a business or entrepreneur book, work out in the morning. And then I usually drink about 5 glasses of water every morning. I don't do coffee. So I wake myself up through the exercise and through the water. When I read, I actually walk. I just walk circles around my house and read, because otherwise, if it's the morning, I want to go back to sleep because I like sleeping. So that's probably the majority of my morning routine. It's nothing big. I guess and then every morning I pray too. So that's what I do in the morning. As far as like, my typical day, it varies a lot, but I mean, typically I'm working from, 7 in the morning until right around 4:30, 5 o'clock. Then I spend the rest of that time with my kids and my wife until typically about 9 o'clock. And then from 9 until whenever I go to bed. I usually, and this varies. I might get a little bit more work done. Might tie up some loose ends, or I might just spend that time, with my wife or whatever, reading or, whatever. But so that varies a lot. Weekends, I try to really make weekends my family time.
I like that a lot. Yeah, like I said, a lot of similarities that you and I have there. So what are you most grateful for?
Man, I mean, probably my family. My wife and 2 kids are amazing. They're healthy. So yeah, I wake up every day just thankful for them, and the health we've all been given is just it's amazing. I see so many people out there that have different stories and who are struggling every day with whether it's finances or whether it's their health or whatever it is, and we just have been blessed.
Yeah, love it a lot. Todd, it was very interesting interview. Like I said, love kind of went into a lot of detail, give us your backstory, kind of your business model, a lot of great advice for us. Really appreciate it. And how do we get in contact with you?
Yeah, so a couple ways. Anybody who wants to talk to me about, potentially investing or what that looks like, they can definitely go onto my website. It's venturedproperties.com. So it's venture and then D as a dog, properties.com. I think it's up there, or maybe if it's not, it's coming soon. So hopefully by the time this show airs, I've got a kind of special report people can download about syndication and really about multifamily and real estate and the benefits of it. And then if they want to talk to me about coaching and what that would look like, they can definitely reach out through my coaching website, which is coachwithdex, coachwithdex.com. And for sure, they can reach me on social media. I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook are probably the two best places to reach me at. I'm also on Twitter and Instagram, but I'm not very active on those.
Awesome. All right. Well, Todd, thank you so much. It was, like I said, it was a pleasure to speak with you, learn a lot more about your business. And like I said, for the folks who are interested, like I said, reach out. Like I said, looks like you just like an open book. Love talking to you, learn a lot about investing, especially out there in your marketplace. But Todd, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your week, and look forward to connect with you soon.
Oh, hey, and I would be bad for me not to say I've got my podcast, like I mentioned at the beginning of the show.
Oh, yeah.
It's called Pillars of Wealth Creation, and they can listen to it the same place they listen to this. Pillars of Wealth Creation. They can go on and take a look at that.
And we'll make sure to add that in the show notes, so people can click on that and check that out as well. And like I said, this is adding a ton of wealth and knowledge to people. Just like I said, that's looking to get more insight and getting into real estate. So Todd, thank you for that. Like I said, we'll make sure to have that in the notes. And again, we'll look forward to connect with you soon.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Take care, my friend.
You too.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Wealth Through Real Estate Investing podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes or the listening platform of your choice. Also, please check us out at DwaineLClarke.com, as well as find us on Facebook for more useful content and resources.